So now I finished my rough cut. My next step is to do basic color correction. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to prepare my sequence for this color correction process. I open up my sequence bin right here, and I find this project that I'm working on now called Stature Rough Cut Titles. So this is my fine cut. I'm going to find it right here in the project folder. I'm going to select it, right click, and go duplicate. So now I've made a copy. Now I'm going to rename this rough cut to identify it as my fine cut. So I've selected it. You notice it's all blue. I'm just going to type in a new name using all caps. Statue fine cut. Then I want to do is I want to double click on it to load it into the timeline right here. I can just close this one, the old statue rough cut. Next thing I want to do is I want to activate the color workspace. So I go up here to the top and I click on color. And you'll notice here on the side is my Lumetri color controls. We have basic, creative, curves, color wheels and match, HLS secondary, and vignette. I usually stick to two. I'm going to show you the basics, and then we're going to get a little bit creative with HSL secondary. So you want to do your color correction clip by clip, because of course each clip is going to be different in terms of the color and in terms of the exposure. So what I'm going to do is zoom in and work on the first clip. Two things I need to do with these first couple clips is I have this superimposed title. So what I'm going to do here on a video track 2, where my title is, I'm just going to click on this little eye to make it invisible. It's still there, it's just I don't see it. Another thing I need to do is, you notice I have this dip to black transition. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select it and cut it out. And then I'll replace it once I've done my color correction. So here I have my first shot, which is the dépanneur, and then it goes to a wider shot of the dépanneur. Right off, this shot looks okay to me, but basic color correction is more a science than an art. So that means we want to use the tools that Premiere Pro provides us. That's going to tell us some very interesting information about our color and our exposure of this shot. This shot looks okay, but it actually can be improved. So let's open up the basic correction section. And here I have all sorts of controls. First thing you want to do is to correct your white balance. This shot is not properly balanced. I think it's a little bit green. In this section, to correct your white balance, I'm going to use this eyedropper to find some white in this scene, click on it, and then the program will automatically adjust my tint and my temperature to make this shot color balanced. I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to zoom in on my image right here. And I know that here, this ad for Boreal beer, I know that polar bear is white. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this eyedropper and click it on the polar bear. And what you'll notice, there'll be a subtle shift from the green to maybe more blue. You'll notice that these controls will shift a bit. So I click on my eyedropper. There it is there. And then I click on the polar bear. Watch these controls right here, the temperature and the tint. You see they shifted more towards the orange and the pink. So they took out a little bit of that green. Then I can go back here to fit so I can see my entire image. And now that sort of slight tint has been removed. The next thing I want to do, and this is where we get in more science, is I want to adjust my exposure, contrast, and all this stuff here. So one of the things we want to use when we're doing color correction, because your computer monitor is going to be different from my computer monitor, and it might be different from a projector, is to use this Lumetri scope. And you can choose different scopes by right-clicking on your mouse. You can use a vector scope, histogram. I'm using the waveform. It's a very simple tool to tell me whether or not something is overexposed. Something is overexposed is if you have a lot of information up here near the 100%. Let's look at this section over here. This tells me something about the color information of this shot, but more importantly, it tells me that this shot is somewhat overexposed. If you notice up here, I shouldn't have this line here right at the 100%. So watch what happens as I do the auto exposure correction for this shot. So I click on auto, and now my shot is properly exposed. What you notice up here, what used to be in the 100% range has now been reduced to be around the 90% range. So as you can see, color correction is quite subtle. This is with color correction. This is without. You notice it's when you add color correction that you start to realize that what you thought was a good shot had some problems to it. So here, my shot was too green and overexposed. So now the colors have been corrected and the exposure has been reduced a bit. I want to do the same thing to this second shot. So I finished correcting my first shot. Now I want to go to my second shot. Second shot is a wider shot of the dépanneur. And once again, what I want to do is I'm going to find some white in the shot. So I'm going to zoom in quite a bit. I can change my zoom tool to hand tool, and then I can move this screen around like this. So once again, I'm going to find the same bear here, with the polar bear, which is white. I click on the eyedropper, and I click right here. Then I'm going to fit this into my screen, and I'm going to do an auto exposure setting. Then what I'm going to do, before I move on, so I don't forget, I'm going to replace that dip to black that I cut out. So I move the playhead to the cut, and I go Command V for paste. And there is my dip to black brought back. So now my shots look like this. And we want to go through our entire shot clip by clip and doing a white balance correction and then an exposure correction. One of Steven Spielberg's most famous films is Schindler's List, which was set during the Second World War. The entire film was shot in black and white except for one important scene which had a special color effect. In that scene, you had this little girl being rounded up by the Nazis, and her coat was red, whereas everything else was black and white. We refer to this as the Schindler's List effect, and I'm going to show you how you can do it with Premiere Pro. So here I am. What I'm going to do here is I have this shot here where I have the cross the street button, and I have this red car that passes in the background. So what I want to do is I want to have this whole shot black and white, except for the car. Because it's red, let's keep it red. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this part of the color correction tool called HSL secondary, hue, saturation, and levels. And once again, what's interesting is we're going to use a little eyedropper here to select the color red. What you can do with this button here called color gray, you can actually see the mask we're creating. So what we're doing is we're selecting this color and we're telling the color corrections tool, mask out everything but this color. So we're kind of working backwards. You'll see what's going to happen. Then I can use this plus tool to add more color. What we also have down here are the controls for the hue, the saturation, and the levels. The hue will give us more of that red, but we have to be careful because, of course, we have some other elements in the shot that also have a bit of red in them, and we usually adjust our levels. So that's not too bad. So you can see I have chosen quite a bit of the car. Let's just play it and see what it looks like. So what I'm going to do next, once I've created my color mask with these controls up here, I go down to these controls down here and I remove the color from that mask. So now you notice that the car is all gray. But that's not what I want. What I want is I want the car to stay red and everything else to go black and white. And that control you'll find over here in this window underneath the tab called Effect Control. You click on it, make sure that this clip is selected, and what you'll find is here is your controls for Lumetri Color, which is the color correction tool over here. And down here at the bottom, we have this button called Invert. And here's what happens. When I click on it, the car is going to turn red and all this other scene is going to turn black and white. And so the effect is like this. I have my wipe, here comes my car. Another trick that I like to do is I like to have a shot start in black and white and then fade into color. And that is actually quite easy to do by placing a cut halfway through the shot and adding a cross dissolve. So here I have this shot that with my car that's in black and white. And what I want to do is as it pans into the grass, I want the shot to become color again. So here at this point, I take my blade tool, I cut the shot, and then I right click and I add a default transition, which is just a simple cross dissolve. Then I go to this shot right here, and what I do is I just turn off the secondary color correction. I just turn this off, and now the shot is in color. So the effect is, using my color correction tool, I've actually been able to do two effects. I'm able to have this Schindler's List effect where the car is red and the rest of the scene is black and white. And then as the camera pans into the grasses are now going to become in color. So let's play from this shot here. Here's my wipe. It fades into color. And then fades into my final shot. So there you go. We've done some basic color correction and we've done some fancy HSL secondary color correction.